War remembers its generals, not its angels. Yet somewhere in the ruins of Europe, amid the frozen silence of the Battle of the Bulge, lived a man the world forgot. Michael Donovan, a 21-year-old medic from Pennsylvania who proved that courage isn't measured in bullets but in mercy. He'd grown up under the gray skies of a coal town, where work was pain and rest was rare. His father, a miner, taught him that a man's worth is what he does when no one's looking. That lesson stayed with Michael when he boarded a troop ship for Europe in 1944. He wasn't a fighter. He was a healer, a quiet soul carrying nothing but a canvas bag filled with morphine, bandages, and faith. When D-Day passed and the push toward Germany began, Michael's unit marched through mud and fire. He saw what textbooks would never describe. Men shattered, boys crying for mothers who would never answer, and heroes who didn't look like heroes at all. Yet, through the smoke and screams, he ran. To every fallen man, every whisper of life. They called him Doc Donovan. He carried no weapon. His hands were his courage. December 1944 changed everything. The snow came early and hard. German armor tore through the Ardennes forest in a final desperate offensive. Cut off, freezing, and out of supplies, Michael's battalion dug into the ice while enemy shells turned the forest to splinters. When orders failed and radios died, only one mission mattered: keep the wounded alive. 3 days into the chaos, Michael faced a choice no soldier should. Surrounded, low on bandages, and with a field hospital under fire, he tied a white cloth around his arm and stepped out of the foxhole. Bullets hissed past, but he kept walking, hands raised. In broken German he shouted, "Medic! For all wounded, American, German, doesn't matter." The firing slowed. A young German lieutenant approached, rifle trembling. Something in Michael's eyes, that calm refusal to hate, made him lower the weapon. "Come," the officer said quietly. "Help them." And so, for 3 days, Michael Donovan became a bridge between enemies. Under the banner of humanity, he crawled through shellfire, dragging Americans and Germans alike to safety. He worked beside enemy medics, shared rations, prayed over dying men in 2 languages he barely understood. He wrapped torn limbs, stopped bleeding, whispered hope. By the end of that frozen nightmare, more than 1,000 lives, from both sides, had been touched by his hands. When Allied forces finally broke through the German line, they found dozens of men, friend and foe, lying together in one makeshift camp, each telling the same story. The medics saved us, but Michael was gone. No one saw where he went. Some said he followed a wounded German into the forest. Others claimed he collapsed from exhaustion and was buried by snow. All they found were blood-stained gloves and a single note in a medic's kit that read, "Keep them alive." He vanished that winter night, taking his name with him, a forgotten hero swallowed by history. For nearly 20 years, no one spoke Michael Donovan's name. The war ended, medals were handed out, nations rebuilt. But some stories simply disappeared into the snow. In 1964, a young journalist named Ethan Cole was working on a feature about unrecognized heroes of World War II. His father had fought in the Ardennes and often mentioned a medic who never stopped running. Every veteran he interviewed told the same tale. A man with no weapon, no fear, and a white cloth around his arm. The forgotten hero. At first, Ethan thought it was myth, a comforting legend soldiers told themselves. But one night, while digging through the U.S. Army archives in Washington, D.C., he found a single, water-stained field report dated January 1945. The words were faint, but clear enough to make his hands tremble. Unidentified medic continued rendering aid to Allied and German casualties for 3 days behind enemy lines. Believed missing in action. Last seen near Malmedy. Ethan couldn't let it go. He felt something powerful in that name. Michael Donovan. He quit his newspaper job, bought a one-way ticket to Europe, and set out to find the man history had forgotten. Belgium was peaceful now, its forests green instead of red. But for Ethan, every tree whispered the echoes of gunfire. He hiked through the Ardennes, asking villagers and old soldiers about an American medic. Most shook their heads. A few remembered whispers of the angel of the snow. One farmer led him to a crumbling church near the village of Stavelot. Inside, under layers of dust, Ethan found a wooden cross carved with shaky letters. MD 1945. To the man who saved us. He knew instantly it was him. But where was the body? An elderly woman appeared from the nearby cottage. Her name was Clara, and she had lived through the battle. She told Ethan about the freezing nights when explosions lit up the sky and how, one evening, a half-dead American medic had stumbled to her door carrying a wounded German soldier on his back. He could barely stand, she said softly. But he smiled and said, "No enemy, only men." I gave him bread and water. The next morning, he was gone. Ethan followed every clue: hospital records, church ledgers, refugee lists. Weeks turned into months. Finally, in a war-torn hospital file from 1946, he found a single entry from a field clinic in southern Germany. Unknown male, U.S. origin. Severe frostbite, partial memory loss. Evacuated to civilian recovery center. No subsequent record. It had to be him. Ethan tracked that trail to a small town near Munich. In the corner of a nursing home, he found an old man tending a garden of wildflowers. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady, gray, kind, and tired. When Ethan introduced himself and mentioned the Battle of the Bulge, the man froze. Then, after a long silence, he whispered, "So, they still remember?" It was Michael Donovan. He had survived. Barely. The frost had taken parts of his feet. Infection nearly ended him. He'd awakened in a field hospital with no memory of his name. Only flashes, blood, snow, and the sound of men calling for help. For years, he wandered through Europe, working as a farmhand and helping rebuild what war had broken. He never returned to America. He said he didn't deserve to. "I didn't save them for glory," he told Ethan. "I just couldn't watch them die." When Ethan asked why he never came home, Michael smiled sadly. "Because the war never left me. But if my story can remind one person that compassion is stronger than hate, that's enough." Ethan spent 3 days recording Michael's memories. Every detail was vivid: the smell of gunpowder, the faces of the men he saved, the fear he carried like a shadow. Then, one morning, when Ethan came to visit again, Michael was gone. The nurses said he died quietly in his sleep, a peaceful expression on his face. Ethan buried him beneath that same cross in Stavelot. On the headstone he carved, "Michael Donovan, he saved 1,000 lives. He belongs to them all." The story ran in newspapers across America. Veterans wept. Families of soldiers Michael had saved wrote letters of gratitude. But the real impact came months later, when schools, hospitals, and even military academies began teaching his story. Not as a tale of war, but as a lesson in humanity. Michael Donovan became a symbol of what it means to serve without hate, to give without reward, to never give up on compassion even when surrounded by darkness.